Okay, good morning everyone. Our topic for today is goods receiving inspection. So, this department is also variously known as goods inwards inspection. So, mao ning gina-inspect ang mga product sa ilahang kuan inward. So, mga nasa sulod niya incoming supplies inspection ng mga moabutay nga mga supply gina-inspect. Boot out supplies inspection kanang mga kuan na ready for kuan na siya nga mga supplies ready for delivery na gina-inspect nila og uban pa nga mga kuan supplies. So ang purpose niini is niini nga kana ang kibali nga inspection area is kuan. Understandably, this is an area where inspection after the event is still normally practiced. Theoretically, receiving inspection should be unnecessary if vendors operate effective quality control. So, ang kini ang inspection area kuan naman unta siya, dili na siya necessary if ang mga vendors is nag-operate sila og epektibo nga mga quality control. So it is implicit in any purchase order that the vendor undertakes to deliver supplies which fully conform to the customer's drawings, specifications and requirements, and which have been adequately checked and tested accordingly. Okay, it is vitally necessary for manufacturers to monitor their incoming supplies. So kinahanglan jud siya i-monitor ang ilang mga supplies even though normally only 2 to 5% of batches delivered may have to be rejected. So bisan pag pila lang 2 to 5% lang ang ma-reject, but kinahanglan gyapon nila is ikuan i-inspect. If these faulty supplies are not extracted, the manufacturer can expend time and money in using them and end up by having to replace when the fault becomes apparent, as well as to correct any consequent effects. So kung ang manufacturer is dili nila kanang i-inspect ang ilahang mga product, so mahitabo nga naay mga mga malfunction sa na mga sipyat sa ilahang product. So mag-expend na po sila og another time or mga another nga kwarta para lang makorektong ilahang kuan. So dako po siyang problema sa mga vendors kay og once nga mahatag nila kining produkto nila nga daot is may possibility nga ibalik sa ila. So mo nang mag-expend sila og another na pud nga kwarta, another na pud nga time para sa pagbuhat niya na. So mo na example sa facility kibali nga kuan. This shows a goods inwards inspection and our area laid out on the roller track principles. So napa example gyapon sa facility kung asa sila naga-inspect silang mga product. Cost. So some companies charge the cost of incoming inspection to the purchase cost of supplies. So ang uban pod, other companies have the department as a direct charge to the purchase department. In few instances, the purchase department administers the activity. So that's all, and thank you for listening.
Morning everyone. This is part of our report. Location and space. A goods inwards inspection section should logically be located as closely as possible to the area where supplies arrive. Adequate space should always be provided for goods inwards inspection. However, provision of adequate space should not be abused by allowing goods to accumulate and be held in abeyance. Flow system. Some large companies operate a computerized system of goods receipt, paperwork, and controls, but most companies have less sophisticated system. Flow system. Supplies, receiving area, unpacking and counting, track, booking, and recording areas. Drawing stores pass various inspectors return to conveyor. Routine and supplier relation. Appraisal reports, recording of performance, vendor statistics and quality indices. Sample castings, incoming paperwork, communication and liaison. Appraisal report. The purchase department will normally advise quality control of their intention to place production orders with a vendor and provide or proving of new designs and components by reliability testing. The purpose of appraisal report is to ensure that the vendor has the necessary experience, expertise, facilities, procedures, methods, and quality coverage to make delivery of satisfactory supplies practicable. It also enables contacts with suppliers' personnel to be established and quality requirements of the customer to be clearly defined. Recording of performance. A good system in goods inward inspection is the maintenance of a folder for each item covered. The folder should contain the drawing, the quality record form, the inspection instructions, copies of any concessions, correspondence with suppliers and record for visits, details of any rejections made. Recording of performance. The purchase department normally maintains record of various parts numbers supplied by any one vendor, such that his overall performance can be assessed in the event of several rejects occurring. Vendor statistics and quality indices. Some quality departments compile statistics on vendor performance and resort to calculations to provide quality indices and vendor rating values. The better procedure is to ensure that the goods inwards inspection supervisor effectively monitors the reject situation. The supervisor should of course report upon the bad. Supplier action as above and arrange for special monitoring to ensure that the troubles are always resolved. Sample casting. Casting boundaries have tended to concentrate on the process aspects with limited capability on measurement. Facilities, etc., and still depend largely on outside specialists for pattern making, die and tool manufacture, chemical and metallurgical laboratories, properties, purify, etc., of the raw material supplies. These facilities, X-ray, porosity, and crack detection, pressure test, impregnation, sample casting. A supplier should therefore be provided with a sample report form, probably with the order. This form is required to be completed and submitted with a sample. There, this is the sample of quality report. Sample casting. Unauthorized impregnation, soldering, filling, or welding repairs should not be practiced without prior approval. Approval of samples or advice of rejection should be provided as quickly as possible. Such approval advice must be qualified to the effect that rejection can be proceed upon authorization by purchase department. Incoming paperwork. This is important. It is important that good understanding should be reached with suppliers on paperwork requirements, especially for the smooth running of the flow system. Suppliers' paperwork should be correct and complete with full and accurate details. Advice notes should be qualified or annotated. The supplies must be complete to the order. Certificate and test results required should be provided with the assignment. Communication and liaison. Suppliers must not assume that they can operate arbitrarily latitude on requirements. Verbal agreements are most unsatisfactory, they lead to arguments, misinterpretation, and even disclaimers. If trouble arises later, such agreements are unsatisfactory to all concerned and should be avoided. Close liaison by visits of suppliers representatives.
This is my topic. Purchase Department Interactions. There is clearly extensive involved of quality control with purchasing regarding both out supplies. This aspect has been touched upon previously in this chapter, but further comment is now desirable. Optimum understanding and liaison is essential for satisfactory both out supplies. Each must have mutual confidence and trust in the other. Some purchasing departments insist that all contact with suppliers be via their department rather than direct. This is not a good procedure and is largely protective in purpose. Custom QC to buyer, custom buyer to supplier sales manager. Other intermediate people within these departments or additional departments can become involved. Good relations, communication, and cooperation can obviate these problems and excellent team attitudes can be established. Regular meetings of senior purchase and quality personnel on both out supplies are most valuable. Incidents of rejects, problem supplies, new supplier and current suppliers giving troubles can all be useful, discussed, and actions agreed. Good inwards inspection procedures, methods, and equipment. 1. Good inwards inspections is an in-areas quality monitoring activity. There are various methods of sampling and considerable information is available on this subject, including normal and skew distributions, standard deviation, and all other statistical features which can become involved. Scheme relying on a single sample, which can be fairly large, double sampling scheme were developed to provide assurance of being representative of the sample. Their sequential sampling allows for successive small quantities down to unit samples to be inspected until go-no-go decision is obtained on numbers of rejects found. The system is good, but it can be initially costly to purchase sufficient units for large inspection department. Normally, it is better to gauge several parts, say for outside diameter, then for overall length, and for the other features. Most quality activities define an item as one defect, even though it may have several errors, but it is important that multiple errors are emphasized by qualifying comment as necessary. The sample quantity must be truly representative of the batch rather than a biased portion of total quantity. True random sample selection is most important. 2. Methods. High proportion of the work handled entails considerable first principle checking in a goods receiving inspections department. It is good practice to submit sample electrical components for reliability testing to verify quality of production manufacture as distinct from probing of initial designs. If necessary, dismantled units should be returned to the supplier for reassembly and test. First principle, instruments such as micrometers, verniers, and high gauge are usually supplied. A coordinate measure machine enables holes, spacing, position, and linear measurement to be taken more quickly and accurately done by surfacing table setups. Electrical equipment can include avometers, wattmeter, thermocouples, high potential transistors for electrical breakdown test, flash testers, oscilloscope, variacs for applying selected steady voltage, digital voltmeters, electronic meters, Cambridge AC test set, universal bridge set, electrostatic voltmeters for high voltage, circa 10,000. Up to 30 relays located on a jig can be tested sequentially. Test speeds can vary from 2 seconds to as high as 50,000 tests per second. Modern miniaturized electronic parts and assemblies needed ever increasing refinements to monitor and control their successful application. That's all. Have a great day. Thank you.
Okay guys, good morning. I am Gerald Marino, your next reporter for the topic about some case experiences of electrical component problems. Case number 1. Electric motors were found to be seizing up after a short period of operation. The cause was found to be metal cuttings left in the rotor grooves, kano mga nabilin-bilin ng mga gipamputol nga puthaw, and the following an assembly operation of drilling holes in the rotor for balancing purposes, and the metal jump between the rotor and stator. Case number 2. Relays were drifting from set operating characteristics. This was a random fault which over long period without cause being determined. Some of the relays to which adhesive had been applied before a break had the locking effect broke. By setting adjustment after the adhesive had hardened. Case number 3. An AC current solenoid was reported as noisy. The supplier suggested copper plating of the plunger and submitted samples. These were tested with an exactly equal on or off false and appeared satisfactory. Case number 4. The printed circuit on one side to the transistor devices. The heat from normal operation of the power transistor expanded the bolts. Repetitive expansion and contraction in use resulted in breakdown of connection and failure. Okay guys, that's all, and thank you. Thank you for listening.
I am Dennis Kimingito, your next reporter for the topic Good Inward Inspection Procedure. So let's get started. There are 3 procedures in good inward inspection. First is method and equipment. Second is electronic component problem. And lastly, electrical breakdown test. So let's start with the first procedure, the method of equipment. The first method of equipment is sampling procedure. First, good inward inspection is an area's quality monitoring activity. Therefore, it logically uses sampling procedure. The various methods of sampling and considerable information is available on this subject are normal and the skew distribution, standard deviation, and all other statistical features which can be involved. There are schemes relying on a single sample which can be fairly large to provide assurance of being representative of a particular batch. To offset this sample size aspect, double sampling scheme were developed. This provides for an initially smallest sample. To offset this sample size aspect, double sampling scheme were developed. This provides for an initially smaller sample which followed by a second and double sample. If the result of the first sample are not finally, sequential sampling allows for successive small quantities down to unit samples to be inspected until a go or no-go decision is obtained on a number of rejects found. Also, there are so-called sequential analyzer marketed which computes the trend and can indicate the go or no go at the fairly early stage. This equipment is good, but it can be initially costly to purchase sufficient units for a large inspection department. On the shortcoming of the system is that each piece part has to be checked for all criteria sequentially and then the next piece part similarly. This means that each gauge or instrument has to be picked up use on one part and put down again.
Apart.
One of the problems which arise particularly in sampling inspection is the definition of what comprises one defect. A part may be defected because of one discrepancy, or it may have errors on a number of a feature. Most quality activities define an item as one defect, even though it may have several errors. However, it is important that multiple errors are emphasized by qualifying comment as necessary. The second is method of applying electrical test equipment and tests carried out must be functional, safety, and reliable factor. It is good practice regularly to select a sample electrical components, dismantle it and study internal workmanship, freedom from fine matter insulation standard and etc. Such tests can be mass revealing and minimize failures and service. The third is equipment. A good inward inspection department requires first principle equipment suitable for supplies involved. Electrical equipment can include a voltmeter, wattmeter, thermocouples, flash tester, oscilloscopes, variacs, digital voltmeter, electronic timer, Cambridge AC test set, universal bridge set, and electrostatic voltmeter. The second procedure is electronic components. Many examples could be listed of problem experienced with electrical components. Some typical examples are the following: soldering joint fault. Such faults are almost entirely due to unsatisfactory techniques, equipment, training, and controls. Attention to these factors will virtually ensure trouble-free soldering. Fuse fault. Fuse locations are often inaccessible, very tight in grip, and yet poor contact arise. This again leads to troubleshooting investigation only to find the fault is the fuse area and current is not reaching the device involved. Wiring fault. This can be of many types. Fault in leads themselves for crimping and tag contact. Poor connection. Rotating fault. Leads touching. Insulated breakdown. Wiring too tight. And fracture. Pressure on wiring leading to break. Contact fault. Insecure, out of square, misaligned, unsatisfactory, wiping effect, and burning due to operation or close speed, unsatisfactory material for current, glass encapsulated part. Lead such part can easily be fractured at the glass entry point. The glass vacuum reel can be distributed by movement of the lead or during soldering of connection to it. Safety trip device. These are usually of two possible types. First, thermal operation, and second, current. Third procedure, electrical breakdown test. These for this fault are sometimes referred to as high potential or flash testing. The test is normally carried out at roughly 6 times the standard main voltage 1500 volt in the UK, and for a duration of 1 minute. This severe test and care must be taken that 1500 volt is not applied to low voltage rated components, which may be excluded from the regulation. Each and every component which is itself built in a machine or complex assembly must be individually flash tested and rigid discipline enforced to this effect by the internal manufacturer and both out supplies. This test is relatively quick and cost negligible and compared with the high cost and trouble of finding where a complete assembly is breaking down on the final test. And that ends my report. Thank you for listening.